Nepal, 37 plus foreign relations. Knowing them more, appreciating the efforts of ambassadors, plenipotentiaries, envoys, and head of missions. Welcome to Their Excellencies. Welcome to Their Excellencies. So thank you so much for your time, Your Excellency.
Thank you.
And it is very interesting that Sri Lanka is a very dear friend of us. So you came here last October. So how are you finding Nepal?
First of all, namaste, Aibowan, that is a Sri Lankan greeting, which means long life. So Nepal, we were very happy to come to Nepal. It was a choice, actually, my choice, and we have been very pleasantly not surprised, but as expected, we feel very much at home, and the people have been very welcoming. So I must say that we are very happy here, me and my husband, and we are settling down quite well.
So there is no winter in Sri Lanka?
No.
So
we have tropical weather
how
throughout.
did you find the winter in Nepal?
The winter, we had our
So
first
you were
winter.
welcomed by winter?
Yes, yes. That actually, when we came, it was just after Tihari. Yes. So the weather was very pleasant at that time, but December and January were a bit too cold. But my previous posting was in Canberra, and we actually found the weather to be quite similar to Canberra. Because we have very sunny days, although it's cold, so that was very nice. And in the night we managed, so I mean it has been not too bad, not as bad as we expected.
Okay, so what do you find noticeable or remarkable about Nepal?
First of all, I think it's not something tangible, but you feel something spiritual, I think, because every street, I believe every street you have a small temple or a statue where people come and light lamps. I think the Nepali people have retained that their indigenous practices, cultural practices, which I find very warm, very interesting also, and maybe it's because Nepal has never been colonized. So your cultural practices have remained throughout the centuries, throughout the years, and it's good to see that people are still practicing those, carrying out those cultural practices. It's something very nice about Nepal.
So Excellency, you have a diverse experience of working at the President's office and sometimes overseeing Africa operations, and now ambassador and working in the missions. So how do you find these different tides of life?
Well, I'm a career diplomat, so it's part of our career. We have to serve both in Colombo at the Ministry of Foreign Relations as well as in missions overseas, Sri Lankan embassies. So it's part of our job. It's not that difficult. I mean, once you get used to it, of course, you might get put into a division or sent to a country with which you have never had any experience before, and actually this is my first experience in South Asia, in the neighboring region, but I mean you have to prepare for it and you adjust to it. So it's not that bad. Even Africa division, I had not had previous experience. I mean, I have never served in Africa. We have only 6 missions in Africa. But I mean, once you start working, you get used to it, and you through your job, you get the experience. But of course, you have to do some prior preparation for it to understand a little bit about the region or the country that you are going to serve in. So it's part of the life of a diplomat, I would say.
You took away my next question. So how is the life of a diplomat?
From the outside, I think it looks very glamorous, but it's not. There are challenges, particularly for the families, because I mean you have to keep moving from one place to another, so you can't really put down your roots or settle down in one place.
But
so
how about you as a person? Does being a diplomat limit your authentic expressions? Like sometimes you have to really consider too many things before you actually open up.
It doesn't depend on where you are posted. It's life of a diplomat is you have to always be diplomatic, and I mean you are always representing your country. So obviously you have to be careful in how you express what your positions or how you express your feelings, because you can't forget the fact that you are a diplomat, because the others are looking at you as a representative of your country. So there are challenges, but I mean with experience you get used to it, I suppose.
So far, like in your diplomatic career, which has been the most memorable experience, if you'd like to share with us? Like which gives you a sense of achievement or sense of...
Okay, when I was overseeing the West Division between 2010 and 2015, beginning of 2015, during that time we hosted the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, which is like the summit level meeting in the Commonwealth, and I was overseeing the division which handled Commonwealth. So that was a very big challenge, and because we had to do all the preparations for the briefs and the substantive work, so that was a big challenge, and I am happy when I look back that that was a successful conference, I think. And of course there are challenges and difficult times, but we managed to come through it. So in my career, I think that was something quite challenging at the time.
Excellency, a very off the track kind of a question. So how, since you have been in this diplomatic sphere, how do countries like Sri Lanka see the European countries, their diplomatic ties with European countries or developed countries, powerful countries, and countries like Nepal? Are these completely different approaches? Are they like sing at the top and sing at the bottom, or they are not? They are not. There is no rank to it.
No, there is no rank, because all countries, all sovereign countries are equal, and that is the basis on which we conduct our foreign relations. Same as Nepal, Sri Lanka is, I mean our foreign policy has non-alignment as a central theme, and we are both founding members of the non-aligned movement. So it doesn't matter whether the country is big or small, we consider them as sovereign nations. Of course, the level of relationship, they differ. The economic relationship, for example, US and Europe, EU countries are the biggest trading partners, I mean our export destinations. So in that sense, they are quite important, whereas China is a very important economic partner, because most of our raw materials and that's a source market, and they have been I would say an all-weather friend. Then of course coming to the South Asian region, the neighboring countries are the most important partners because they are our neighbors.
For Sri Lanka, who is the most important friend in South Asian sphere?
I wouldn't say we have the most important country as a friend. No, it's difficult to say that, because obviously with each country you have a particular relationship. But we maintain very good relations with all our partners, not only in South Asia, even elsewhere, but particularly in South Asia, because as I said, they are our immediate neighbors, and in times of natural disaster and things like that, they are the first ones that come to your assistance. Like for example, when we had the floods in 2016 and 2017, Nepal has given us financial assistance. And similarly in 2015, after the earthquake, Sri Lanka was one of the first countries to send a plane load of medical doctors, engineers and relief items. So like that, I mean, we come to our each other's assistance at such times.
Excellency, you've also worked in the with the President's office and all. So, do countries like Sri Lanka still have this challenge of maintaining relationships, or let's say mutual influence of relationship with China and India? Like, do you think we kind of sometimes get sandwiched between these two countries?
Well, with any relationship there can be ups and downs. India and China are both very important trade partners for us. India is our closest neighbor, I mean emerging power, and of course for our national security India is very important, and as you know we have had about 30 years of a terrorist conflict. So we understand that, and we of course we also understand India's concerns with regard to its security, and we are conscious of that, and we have a very good cooperation on security and defense matters with India. Also we have a free trade agreement because our trade relations are very strong, and historically I mean we have had many linkages, same as with Nepal. We got Buddhism came to us from India. So those historical links are something that cement a relationship. When it comes to China, again a very powerful country now, but from the time that we established relations way back in the 1950s, even before that we have had very strong relations, and particularly strong trade relations, and we have the interaction between our leaders with both these countries have been very strong. Even the present president who was elected only last November, he has already undertaken a state visit to India. So we maintain our relations with both countries, and we manage the relationship.
It would be an honor to hear little bit about Sri Lanka at people-to-people level. For example, the Nepalese viewers who are watching us in this through this television. So how do you narrate Sri Lanka in a way they understand, in a short few lines?
Okay, Nepal is a landlocked country. Sri Lanka is an island. So they are immediately, I think there will be curiosity for a Nepali to see what Sri Lanka is like. And in fact, we have heard from many Nepalis who have visited Sri Lanka that they enjoy the fact that it is an island. And it's a very beautiful country. Within a very small area, we have a lot of diversity. We are a multicultural country. We have majority Buddhists, but we also have Hindus. Then we have Muslims and Christians. And when I say diversity, it is not only with regard to the society, the people, the society, but also our landscape, the natural resources. We have a lot of diversity. And I would invite Nepali people to go to Sri Lanka and see. I'm sure they will enjoy. We have ocean-based activities like whale watching, which you can't get here. Of course, we have a lot of wildlife, but they are in Nepal also you have wildlife. But I think there are many things, and I'm sure that Nepali people will feel very much at home when you go to Sri Lanka, because we have many similarities.
So what are those similarities, if you'd like to outline a few?
Yeah, particularly religion, Buddhism and Hinduism, there are a lot of connections. In fact, Buddhism was, I would say, the first connection between Sri Lanka and Nepal. That is something that I have felt, and I have found when I came to Nepal also. That's the first point of contact, and these links exist still. There are many Nepalis Buddhist monks who go to Sri Lanka to study Theravada Buddhism, and many of them, they are very fluent in Sinhalese, which is my mother tongue. So it has been a very pleasant surprise for me. So I mean, they are very good ambassadors for Sri Lanka in Nepal, and I know that they tell others, people who come to their temples, about Sri Lanka, and we have experienced many Nepali people going to Sri Lanka as a result. And there are also about 50 Nepali students who are currently studying in Sri Lanka. In Nepal, we have about 100 Sri Lankan students, in fact.
And 100 Sri Lankan students?
Yes, they are mainly studying medicine. And at the level of youth exchange also, we have had many interactions. Nepali youth have participated in youth camps that were held in Sri Lanka. And we participated in the South Asian Games last December. So there are a lot of contacts between the peoples of the two countries.
Now moving on to Nepal and Sri Lanka relations. So what would be interest of Sri Lanka in Nepal?
It's a South Asian neighboring country. So they are, that's the first point of departure for our bilateral relationship. But as I said, historically we have had very close links due to Buddhism, which continue to this day, and that is the foundation, I would say, about
but how about economy? Because we started our formal relations, diplomatic relations established in 1957, which is like
60 years ago, 63 years ago.
Exactly.
Yes.
So in those 63 years, still when we see the trade and exchanges figures, they're not as encouraging.
There is a joint commission that has been established between the two countries, particularly to discuss about economic relations. So we are trying very hard now to convene the meeting where our officials can sit and discuss the prospects and the challenges to developing trade. I think one of the major impediments has been, one is the domestic situations in both our countries. We have both gone through conflicts. In Sri Lanka's case, it was about 30 years. So during that time, a lot of our diplomatic effort has been focused on that because they had a very widely spread international presence among the diaspora. But now both countries are politically stable. So now is the time even for Nepal. I mean, after the 2015 constitution, in 2017 you had elections. So now there is political stability, which is very good. And this is the time I think that we should use to maximize the strong relationship that we share historically and culturally, to build on that and to move to the next step, which is an economic partnership. And that's what we are working towards. There has been connections between the private sectors. There have been joint ventures in banking and insurance. And right now we have joint ventures in hospitality, in hydropower and entertainment. But as you said, there is much more potential. When you look at bilateral relations, both Sri Lanka and Nepal, we are developing countries. So we don't have a lot of resources. So when we have domestic compulsions, naturally your priority, the government's priority, is to address those domestic compulsions. For Sri Lanka's part, from our economy was liberalized in 1977, and we had a presidential system of government introduced in 1978, and it was after that that we really opened up our economy.
So of course in the books it's old, but this relationship now needs a new trajectory.
There has been interactions between our leaders since the time we established diplomatic relations in 1957. King Birendra, Prime Minister Girija Prasad Koirala, Prime Minister Diuba, and most recently of course President the Right Honorable Vidya Devi Bandari. Then every one of our executive presidents who have been elected since 1978 have visited Nepal, and we have had interactions on the sidelines of SARC summits as well.
What's on your plate now for this coming 1 year
Yes,
or 2-3 years, for your tenure,
Yes.
what are the 4-5 main things on the table?
The main thing is, as you very rightly pointed out, the economic relationship, and we are working very hard to convene the first joint commission meeting. That is a formal platform that is there. We signed the agreement in 2009.
Do you think this kind of platforms have ever
Yes,
in reality facilitated these kind of things? Because we
I think
we also are part of BIMSTEC and all, and even SARC is there, but then besides the regular...
No, those are multilateral agencies. Here joint commission is between Sri Lanka and Nepal, and this kind of platforms are very common in diplomacy, because that is where you bring together all the experts from different ministries, different government agencies, and discuss the bottlenecks and look forward, I mean plan for what needs to be done.
Obviously, but
yes.
my question was
yes.
yeah, sure.
The
effectiveness of these kind of instruments that we developed?
Because that is where you discuss directly face to face where the relationship is, what are the bottlenecks, what you need to do to get over that and to improve. So that is a very important thing. It may not look that important to ordinary people. Yes. The other thing, other impediment is of course the lack of direct connectivity between the two countries, because Nepal is, I mean, we don't have any land connection and we don't have air connectivity also, which is very unfortunate, but this is again something that we are working on, and I hope to see during my tenure is to have a flight from Colombo, and we have been talking to Sri Lankan Airlines. They are very positive. Of course, the pandemic, COVID pandemic was a big challenge, but I mean, we are resilient countries. Of course, the final decision will depend on the airline, because it depends on the number of passengers and things like that. But interestingly, there have been a number of Sri Lankan cargo flights that have come in the recent few days. And let's hope that that bodes well for the future, and they will start flying to Kathmandu. In fact, they had included Kathmandu in their business plan for this year. Of course, we have to now wait and see, because all airlines are facing difficulties.
Exactly. So the connectivity is your second priority. Yes. And thirdly?
Thirdly, to increase the number of tourists between the two countries and the trade figures. When it comes to tourism, I think that is a largely untapped area. Many, we have about 50 to 70,000 Sri Lankans who visit Lumbini, because naturally, I mean, Nepal is known to many Sri Lankans because of Lumbini, the land of birth of Lord Buddha. But there are many other places in Nepal that I hope they will come to see. Even around Lumbini, there are other places which are of significance to Buddhists, like Ramagrama and Kapilavastu. So we hope to see an increase in pilgrimage to those areas, and we want to increase the number of Nepali people visiting Sri Lanka as well. There again, the numbers have increased but still remain low, and so those are the I would say the three main things that I want to see during my tenure. Of course, the political relations are quite strong, and that's something that we will continue to maintain, but economic relations is really the key thing that we need to work on, both countries.
So is there anything new and interesting happening in the political relations?
Actually, tomorrow we are having parliamentary elections in Sri Lanka, so we will have a new government in place. We have a new president who was elected last November. Then he had to handle the response to COVID. In Nepal also, since 2017, you have a new government. There have already been contacts between the two prime ministers in the form of felicitation messages and so on. So let's hope that there will be an exchange of high-level visits happening. That is the high point of any political relationship. This kind of bilateral visits to each other's countries, and within the regional organizations also, we have been working closely together, and I hope that they can be re-energized for the benefit of all the member countries.
Excellency, how about the people-to-people connection? Is there any other means besides tourism and pilgrimage to kind of, bring it into light? Have you thought about, how have you thought about promoting Sri Lanka in Nepal?
Education, as I mentioned, is another very great interaction for people, because students are normally young people and they are great ambassadors for the country that where they study in. Buddhist monks, as I said, have been going to Sri Lanka and they continue to do, and they are very good ambassadors for Sri Lanka here. Then youth is another one. We have been actually discussing with one of the hotels to organize a food festival, because Sri Lankan food is very unique.
I'm sure I'm a fan of Peter Kuruvita's show, and I really think Sri Lankan food would be very pleasing to the Nepalese palate.
Yes. So we have had very deep discussions, but unfortunately the lockdown came and those plans had to be shelved. But let's hope that they can be revived very soon.
How are politicians of Nepal? Like, based on your interaction, are they welcoming? Are they open enough?
They are very warm. As I said, we have both me and my husband, we have felt very welcomed in Nepal, and we feel a connection with the Nepali people. I have been actually told that my name is Nepali Himalee. So there again, maybe there's a karmic connection. So as I told you earlier, there's a connection that comes from within. Which makes you feel very much at home.
How about the cultural relations, cultural exchanges between Nepal and Sri Lanka? Because I know Sri Lanka as the place of Ravan, and we read Ramayana and all. And one of my friends was narrating me that the way these stories are told in Sri Lanka is again a little bit different than what we hear. Well, so how about giving a complete new perspective?
This is something that we are promoting. Our tourist board actually, we are promoting the Ravana trails. For us, of course, he is a hero in the sense, he's a of course it's a myth, it's based on mythology, but Ravana is considered as a heroic figure in Sri Lanka. But I know that many Nepali people who visit, they want to go and see, because it comes from the Hindu background. But I think the Buddhist links are also the very unique, because here I have found that even Hindus, they also follow some Buddhist practices. The two religions go hand in hand. And even in Sri Lanka, in Buddhist temples, many Buddhist temples, you find a small temple for the Hindu gods and goddesses. So you will feel very much at home in Sri Lanka. So these cultural relations are very much built on these religious links, and they go back many centuries. So this is something that we can really use to bring the countries even closer and to promote tourism.
Your Excellency, now have you been to Lumbini? Did you get a chance to go there?
Course.
Of course. Okay. So now you know that Buddha was born in Nepal, in that place. And how do you think Sri Lankans think of Buddha, Siddhartha Gautam? And do they see it, do they feel that Buddhism is largely a part of Nepal? And did they actually know that this thing originated and grew from Nepal, or the roots were in Nepal?
Yes, that is how Nepal is known to most Sri Lankans. The majority of our population are Buddhist. So when you say Nepal, the first thing that comes to their mind is Lumbini, and because of that, Nepal has a very special place in the Sri Lankan people's heart. Of course, we also know Nepal for Sagarmatha, Mount Everest. But yes, they definitely know. Although to be quite honest, I don't know whether all the pilgrims who come to Lumbini, they are mainly elderly people. I don't know to what extent they know about Nepal, and that beyond Lumbini, what is there to see in Nepal. But generally, if you go and ask a Sri Lankan person whether they know Lumbini and Nepal, yes, definitely. And that is how they first identify Nepal, as being the home of land of birth of Lord Buddha.
Excellency, during your presentation of credentials to the President Vidya Devi Vandari, you've talked about supporting the implementation of Lumbini Master Plan.
Yes.
And also talk about the consolidation of Buddhist links between two countries. So what is in your mind, or what has been brewing in this regard?
When you say Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism, Sri Lanka played a key role in reviving Theravada Buddhism in Nepal. In 1940s, there was a scholarly Nepali monk, Venerable Amirtananda Thero. He played a very major role in reviving Theravada Buddhism in Nepal, and he had studied in Sri Lanka. So he invited the Sri Lankan Buddhist delegation as a goodwill mission, because at that time I understand there were certain restrictions placed on Theravada Buddhist discourse. So there was a delegation led by the Venerable Narada Mahathero from Sri Lanka that came, and they interceded with the then government, and those restrictions were relaxed. And it was only after that that Theravada Buddhism actually grew in Nepal. So we have played a very key role in reviving Theravada Buddhism in Nepal. And if you go to Anandkut Vihar, of course it was damaged in the earthquake, but the old Chaitya that was there, the stupa, that was built on an initiative of this Venerable Narada Thero. So even now those links are continuing. Well, this Buddhist circuit idea, I think, has been discussed within SARC, in SARC context, because many of our countries have Buddhist influence and Buddhist archaeological heritage. So there has been talk, but unfortunately nothing much seems to have happened. So this is something I think that both Nepal and Sri Lanka should try to revive within SARC. It's not something we can do bilaterally, because it involves many other countries. I think it will be to the benefit of all the countries concerned, because South Asia can be promoted for Buddhist travelers from all over the world. There are many Buddhists outside South Asia, but I understand only a very small number actually visit South Asia for Buddhist pilgrimage, and this is a huge potential that we are not tapping. But this is something we have to do with other countries. When it comes to Lumbini, yes, the last presidential visit we had was in 2018, the former president, and he also expressed the commitment of Sri Lanka to help develop Lumbini. I understand that large part of the master plan, the Japanese architect who designed that master plan, major part of that plan has been implemented, but there are certain areas that have not yet been touched. So I have had actually a number of discussions with the Lumbini Development Trust, and we have got some ideas about how Sri Lanka can come in, and which we have conveyed to Colombo. So let's see. I mean, we are very keen. We have committed, expressed our commitment at the highest levels. So I hope that can move forward.
Excellency, this was interesting. So what was your interest in reconstructing Ratu Machindranath Temple in Bungmati?
At the time when the earthquake happened, many of the heritage buildings in Nepal had been damaged or destroyed. So we had selected two temples. Anandkut Vihar, of course, had historic, there was a Sri Lankan connection. Yeah. Ratho Machindranath temple is Hindu, it's important to Hindus as well as Buddhists. So I think that is why that has been selected. Unfortunately, the reconstruction work was not completed on schedule, and I understand that the work is still ongoing. But the initial financial assistance was made from Sri Lanka.
Excellency, the Sri Lankan joint ventures investments. So, what is your commentary on that? How did they go? And there were a few ones, but how was the exit? And what is the feedback? Is it still a preferred destination for Sri Lankan?
Yes, banking and insurance. As I said, there have been joint ventures. I'm sorry, I'm not exactly familiar as to why they haven't continued. But even the Bangladesh Nepal Bank, they still have the same logo, which has the lion in their logo. That was one of the joint ventures, and I think there is still opportunities, but of course now there are many other players, so it's more competitive. I think the internal situation in Nepal would have prevented private companies from Sri Lanka to come in, but now we do have a joint venture in hydropower and also in entertainment, and as
so how are these investors feeling about Nepal? Have you been able to tap into the feedback?
Yes, particularly with regard to hydropower, they have conveyed to us that there are other opportunities, and
are they happy with the way things go here, or
yes.
Are there any feedbacks for us?
Well, I haven't so far heard any negative complaints. So I believe, I mean, obviously there would have been challenges, but I think they have managed those challenges, and I would encourage our investors to look at hydropower, and also in construction, in road construction particularly. There are opportunities in Nepal for Sri Lankan investors, and that's something that we certainly encourage our private sector.
What would be the interest? Which sectors do you think Nepal should be promoting to Sri Lanka besides tourism?
You mean for Nepal?
Yeah, in Nepal. For example, if Nepal wants to invite Sri Lankan investors, so which sectors do you think Nepal should be showcasing?
Hydropower is one, because we have expertise in that. Hospitality is another one where we have a lot of expertise. Construction, education.
So this construction has been an original DNA of Sri Lanka, or this has been developed after the ties with Chinese companies?
No. I mean, after the conflict ended in 2009, the biggest priority for the government was to improve the connectivity, not only within Sri Lanka, the road construction, because many of the infrastructure had been damaged, but also with the outside world. So Sri Lankan companies have gained expertise in that field, and we also have a construction chamber in Sri Lanka, and they are very keen to work with Nepal. Of course, they are looking at the construction sector in Sri Lanka, but I mean, I would say that there are opportunities to even engage Nepali employees to work in the construction industry in Sri Lanka.
Okay.
But this is not something that government can intervene. We can facilitate, but it is up to the private companies.
Sure. So you think hydropower and hospitality and even construction?
Yes, and also healthcare. Healthcare. I think there are opportunities for our private sector. We have number of private companies who have invested in health in Sri Lanka, in hospitals, and there are opportunities for them to invest in.
So if I am a Nepali and I have good local competencies in these sectors, and I want to approach Sri Lankan investors and even operators and management companies, so how should I be going forward?
I would invite them to come and have a discussion with us first of all, and if there are Nepali manufacturing companies that want to manufacture for export purposes, I would invite them to look at Sri Lanka, because we have the infrastructure in place. Being an island nation, we have very good port network, so they will and our road infrastructure is very good now, so they will find a very easy and expeditious way to export their product from Sri Lanka.
Do you think the Nepal and Sri Lanka can also have relations in terms of ports, usage of ports?
Yes, interestingly.
Has this been explored?
Well, interestingly, we had a discussion with the Nepali shipping lines. You have shipping lines of your own, and this is something we want to explore further. Encourage them to use Sri Lankan ports, because you don't have your own other than dry ports. So it's very interesting you mentioned that, because that's something that we have been looking at, and I think there is potential for future cooperation for Nepali companies to look at Sri Lankan ports for your export opportunities.
So through this program, do you want to also welcome Nepalese shipping lines to discuss with you? There are a few ones which have recently opened up, so if they are interested.
Yes, no, there is a Nepali shipping lines under the Ministry of Industry, I believe.
Even few private companies have also come up.
Yes, I would definitely invite them to come and talk to us.
Excellency, do you think our relationship is very much catalyzed or enabled by SARC, or even if we were to assume this SARC association was not there, our relationships would still have been the same?
Of course, I mean, our relationship started long before SARC. SARC came into being in 1985, but Nepal-Sri Lanka relations have been there for centuries. So I think, I mean, the relationship would have continued even if SARC was not there. But obviously, because of SARC, we have had more opportunities to interact between not only at the political level, but even at official level, because they meet regularly at meetings and interactions. But I think it's important to have this kind of regional organization. If you look at around the world, in many of the other regions, they have regional organizations which have moved forward much further. So my hope is that SARC can also become like that uniting factor for the South Asian region, where all the countries, because we have to work together. And particularly in the post-COVID world, I must say that the countries are going to look at neighbors, not only countries, even people, even for tourism. They will feel more comfortable traveling to countries closer to home. So SARC really would need to
But do you think SARC is working on its scope with the effectiveness that it should have been doing? Or has it become more of a very ritualistic?
It's unfortunately, I mean, the political the summits have not happened, but SARC is an organization and it's as strong as the members want it to be. So it's the member countries that have to come together and keep it up. But apart from the political relations, many other things have been happening in SARC, culturally, academically. There's a South Asian university. There are many cultural exchanges and other interactions between the people. So those are encouraging things. But unfortunately, because of this, that we have to agree on everything by consensus, that has been a kind of a stumbling block.
So how have been your friendship with fellow ambassadors?
Very good. I have met a number of them. The diplomatic community in Kathmandu is quite small, but maybe because of that they know one another quite well. And we have met several times at social functions. That's something that I realized in Kathmandu. The social functions are very many. And in fact, before the lockdown, my evenings were quite busy, I must say, which was good, because as you come into a capital, you get to meet a lot of people. So I maintain very good relations with many of my colleagues. And some of them, I think, have now traveled to their home countries. But it's not difficult to maintain ties because it's a small number.
In your opinion, what are the things that Nepalese people should be doing, Nepalese citizens should be doing to be more connected with Sri Lankan fellow citizens? Like we don't have Sri Lankan television channels in Nepal, though we love South Indian movies a lot. So we are yet to explore a lot of life of Sri Lanka. For example, how is a particular Sri Lankan citizen's life in Sri Lanka, and what kind of food they eat. So there are a lot of curiosities. How are you going to assure Nepalese people as an ambassador representing Sri Lanka that, okay, I will tell you more stories about Sri Lanka?
Well, on the we have had interactions with the trade chambers and the tourist tour operator organizations. But as you said, you are talking about the ordinary people. We have had a number of television documentaries which have been aired on Nepali channels in the past, showcasing Sri Lankan culture, Sri Lankan food and Sri Lankan life. And that is something that we hope to continue in future as well. Unfortunately, everything has come to a standstill with the lockdown. But as I told you, we were also discussing with one of the hotels to organize a food festival. We had one in 2018 or 2017, before I came, of course. But the embassy has been organizing this kind of uniquely Sri Lankan events for Nepali people to come and enjoy. Then we of course have the National Day. And last year we organized a Deepavali festival celebration at the embassy, to which our friends were from Nepal were also invited. Then the National New Year, which comes in April, of course this year we couldn't organize. Last year the embassy had organized, to which Nepali friends were invited. That is, I would say, the most important national festival in Sri Lanka. Then also for Vesak, which you call Baishak here. Again we decorate the embassy and we organize like a religious ceremony and kind of like a celebration. Again we couldn't do that this time other than the decoration. So through this kind of Sri Lankan festivals we try to interact and kind of show a little bit of Sri Lanka in Kathmandu.
So, Excellency, in your opinion, to make this Sri Lanka and Nepal diplomatic relationship very active, what are the few suggestions that you have for your for the Nepalese government and Nepalese people? What are the things you think we should be prioritizing?
I sincerely feel that the economic relationship is the thing, because economy is key to any relationship in today's world, today's context. So that is the first thing that we should, key thing that we should focus on, and that is why for that I mentioned that the joint commission need to be convened, and that's at foreign minister level. So either the foreign minister of Nepal will visit Sri Lanka or the Sri Lankan foreign minister. That will have to be decided through mutual discussion. That is the first thing. The other thing is I think to have this direct air connectivity. I think that will facilitate a lot more exchange between the people, the business people, not only tourists, even for trade. That will be a very important link.
How easy it is to get things done in Nepal, especially at the government level, like in your experience?
Well, I mean, I haven't. I must say, I haven't encountered any problems. And I must mention that during the lockdown, we had 2 evacuation flights. One was a flight that came from Sri Lanka to take the Sri Lankan students that were here, and the government, all the relevant government agencies.
So, did you get the expected cooperation?
Of course.
Was it fast, on time?
Very much, and excellent cooperation. In fact, we mentioned that in publicizing about the evacuation also, that it has been excellent.
Your Excellency, at last, what would be your message to Nepalese people?
I think I would like to say Dhanyabad. As I said, the Nepali people have been very welcoming and very warm towards us. So thank you for making us feel welcome and making us feel at home. And I hope that we can make our relations even stronger.
Thank you so much, Excellency. Thank you so much for your time.
Dhanyabad.
Nepal, 37 plus foreign relations, knowing them more, appreciating the efforts of ambassadors, plenipotentiaries, envoys, and head of missions.
Welcome to Their Excellencies.